Yo, what's up guys? Talking about Summons War Rune Optimizer in 2024. Just making a bunch of videos, or well, this is going to be the first video. It might be in a series of more videos. If you want to see more videos on this series, let me know in the comments and also like this video. Within this series, I'm just going to showcase like how to re-rune like a specific team. In this case, I'm going to talk about PvE teams, could be siege teams, could be RTA teams, could be any other teams later as well, or any specific units or any specific features. But in this case, going to be zooming in like, okay, you want to create a Dragon's Abyss hard team, and just what my approach is like, okay, I want to get the Dragon's Abyss hard team. What do you have to do for it? How do you look at it? I will go for the team that is, I would say, the one that uses a lot of this kind of stuff. So that's the Julie, with the Shina, with the Kyle, with the Luna, with the Liam. So because this team does use a lot of like the mechanics that I normally use in the Summons War Rune Optimizer, we're going to go through all of those and just use it how that works. First of all, always when you use the Rune Optimizer, keep in mind you are creating teams. You are not ruining an individual unit. Sure, you can use it to rune an individual unit, but in general, you want to create teams. Creating teams is so much more interesting than creating an individual unit. Like, let's say you build a Yeon Hong and you throw the fastest set at it, but it actually gets for an S2 the speed buff and it's like 15% or so, but units don't follow up on it. That's not really useful, right? You have to have units that follow up, and therefore you maybe have to tune her down or speed other things up. It's all about the team compositions rather than individual units. So that is just a sidestepping thing for all of the re-runing. But in this case, we're going to look at the Julie, Shina, Kyle, Luna, and Liam. First of all, what do we need to know is how fast do these units have to be? I made dungeon guides on those, so based on those dungeon guides, you can check those. Or you can just check that out, those sheets that where you get like all of the speed tuning, that kind of stuff. So there we are, all of the speeds of the pluses, and then also what the total speed is. In this thing, in the optimizer, you would have to put the total speed, so you can't really work off just the plus. So it's nice to have both in your mind. Gonna be removing the notepad for just a second so you can see everything. So if we go to monster, let's say that there's a few units that you don't want to use the runes of. So let's say in this case my Tesher. So you can simply search Tesher and click on the runes that you want to exclude them, so you would lock the runes. So simply the Tesher is not going to be used when you're re-runing those. Then we go to the Julie. We start off with the first unit. In general, you want to start off with the unit that's the hardest to rune first, or the unit that you want to throw the best rune quality at. In this position, we would have a Julie that's probably not on a rage set. I will probably be looking at Swift or maybe even Fatal, because it will deal damage from additional damage artifacts, which we're also going to showcase how that works. And I would say the highest damage set probably has to be on the Luna. Oh wait, I actually wrote those two the other way around. It is this way around. Yep, that's better. So the highest damage set is going to be on you. This is probably going to be a Swift set or something like that. This we could go for triple fights, but let's just for the sake of it not go for triple fights. Then we have some leftover damage set over here, and this one will be triple fight. So we have to keep that in mind. When you're re-runing that, that's also something that you want to keep in mind, like what do you actually re-rune it for. So first of all, we're going to start off with the Julie. So Julie, what you want to do is very simple. Select attack, crit damage, attack. Make sure that you uncheck this one. Otherwise, it's just going to use all of the runes that are in your inventory, which is not really going to be the case. We definitely want to go for, I would say, Swift. I think it's probably the best way to do it. We could also select like a double thing in here. It is even possible right now to say like, okay, I want to check all of those three over here. That's with one of the more recent updates. That definitely does help out a bit. I do have the GPU optimization because I have the Pro version. If you don't have the Pro version, you don't have that, and it will be a little bit slower, but you can still work with it. It's not the worst. Then you want to set those focus for attack, crit damage, crit rate, and speed. Do keep in mind that you see this number going up. If you would remove some of those, you see this number like changing. It is sometimes where I would say like, okay, I need 100 crit rate, but I already have pretty high crit rate on the unit, or you're using a crit rate slot 4. You might want to tune off that crit rate focus because it's trying to find crit rate runes that maybe you need like a slot 5 that doesn't have crit rate in there. But since your focus is on crit rate, it's trying to find crit rate on every rune possible. So for that reason, if you sometimes off-checking things does help out a little bit to maybe get like a different results in there. So that's definitely a tip to keep in mind. We do need 100 over here. We do need 223 over here. And we're not going to do for artifacts just yet. So we are going to be looking at artifacts in just a moment, but not just yet. So if I would run this right now on 10 search depth, it's not going to get that many results. But if I do it to 50 right now, it's going to get a lot of results. What I mostly do is keep this low, like let's say 10. I do want to check in like the damage. So you want to say damage. We go for 1,000 shots. We go in this. There is a way that you can actually put in how many sets do you have of fight over here. But personally, I like to keep it kind of flexible and just put it over here. So we have like a 33 elite plus, let's say we have like 1 unit on triple fight. Let's just make it 50 for simplicity right now. But wait, does it actually show? Yeah, that does show for you guys. So yeah, just for simplicity, we're gonna make that 50. We do not have any of those. We don't have any of those. We do have skill ups, yes. You could look up the exact amount of defense that's on those crystals that she's hitting. I think it's like 1400. It's not exactly true, but let's just put in 1400 and then we're gonna hit apply. Since we only have like 10 surge depth right now, it's not gonna get too many of bolts, but it is also a way that at the first iteration, wait, let's actually switch this off to, let's just go for just Swift because I think those are not really that many bolts. Interesting that it's not finding any bolts. How the hell are you? Oh, probably because it's not searching for any speed, it's just searching for pure tech. Let's just search for speed, and then probably crit rate, and then you're gonna find your builds, right? Yep, that's where you find a lot of builds. So these are the damage builds. Of course, you want to set it to the highest damage. However, we do know that Julie will actually deal a lot of damage based on artifacts rather than anything else. Like, it's mainly the artifact damage based on attack rather than anything else. So what we could do over here to actually lock that out, let's say we're using this set. We're not actually going to use this set. It will switch a little bit later on, so you could go back and forth to do it. But let's say we equip all of those runes. We have those runes on the Julie right now, and what we can do right now is use the runes only and fill the empty slots only. So in this case, we see that we only get 1 build. But from this position, we can go into use artifacts. So we do want to go for artifacts. Now it's only just 70. If you would do it at the same time, you would see that you get like a shit ton of builds. Wouldn't recommend that, so I would recommend to do that separately. So we're gonna go for this and for this. And I just want to see what's the highest damage output on here, which then Julie will actually go for artifacts that are most likely the best artifacts for her damage output over here, based on additional damage artifacts or on crit damage or anything like that. If you were to select like a specific element, then it would also calculate in the elemental damage. The only thing it's not good at calculating is crit damage max and crit damage low. So for that reason, those you kind of have to look at it yourself. But in this case, we can at least check out those. So if we were to lock the runes and artifacts right now, or equip them at least, we will see that we have those equipped. Then we would uncheck those, or just saying like use the current artifacts only. And now we can actually start optimizing a best build for this Julie as well, based on those artifacts that are actually in there. So in this case, we're going to go back to saying like, okay, let's say we go for Fatal, we go for Rage as well, just to try out the other builds. And what you definitely want to do, which we didn't do too much currently, we only just set in like the speed and the crit rate that we need, but you also want to limit that you're not getting a shit ton of builds. So currently I'm sitting in front of it. You can see like how many bolts are here at the bottom left. If I were to get like a shit ton more bolts, it's gonna take forever to load this whole thing. So I always would like to start off with just a 10 or some low number, and then just say like, okay, what's the highest damage output here that of a set that I would like? So let's say 3,400. So if we start going with this right now, but we crank this up to, let's say 50, which 50 or like 100 is mostly a good number, then it's going to be checking a lot of builds. But if I would do this without this limiter of 3.4k, it's going to be taking for freaking ever. It's still going to be taking quite a bunch of time right now. I do know that it's taking a lot of rage runes. Those are probably more speedy rage runes than others. We can already see that it's getting a little bit laggy because it's just trying to get so many builds in. And it's actually still finding more and more builds. So definitely the GPU optimization thing does help out a lot. But it's also a number that you could say like, okay, first I do like 25. I put in the highest number that I see over here back into this thing. And then I keep going back and forth on that at that point. But actually, interestingly enough, I'm finding a rage set that's not really used by anything else than those units, which is absolutely my highest set apparently. Didn't even know that my Julie on a rage would have done so much more damage. But apparently, still is the case. Rage is pretty OP. And yep, these are all runes that I can totally use. That's also a thing that's very interesting. I did click it already. I didn't really mention it. Click on the plus 15, because in this case, I'm actually using a rune that's not plus 15 yet. Also, for that reason, it's recommended to already put your grinds in, so you can already see the grinds like with the end result of what your stats would be, because this crit damage could even be higher than just a 5, of course. You could also say like, okay, use the grinds for like a min or a max. If you didn't grind that much, grinding on a min is definitely a useful one, because then it can at least put like a speed to a +2 or a +3 if you have those grinds. If you put it to a max, it's also going to take those legendaries and then makes the assumption that everything is going to be 5 grinded from legendary speed and shit. So that's not really that chill in most cases. So most of the time I just turn it off and I just grind before going in here. But normally I don't really put rage on this, but I think this is actually kind of a fine set for Julie, and I don't think it uses any of the rage runes that I would normally like to use, maybe with the exception of this one, that I would take on like a Luna. So in this case, these are the fine runes that we want to use. I always equip them just to see that these units are actually having those runes, and then I lock them. Like the locking part is definitely important because otherwise every time it's going to be like, oh, that rune is already on a Julie, or oh, that rune is already on something else. So we have the Julie fixed right now. This is always for me a thing like, okay, unit is fixed. Next up, I could go for the Shina next, but I think the Luna next is going to be more interesting because Luna is actually the one that is going to be dealing the most amount of damage on this. So if we were to go to a Luna, Luna is definitely going to be on a Rage set. So let's remove that and let's put in Rage. There is a slight bug thing sometimes that if you switch to a different unit that doesn't have anything and this thing is already in here, that's it's sometimes like picking something up and then it's saying like, oh, I'm not searching for actually for rage, what you put in here. Just remove this one and then click it on back again. That's just a bug that they're still having to fix for at this moment. Probably when you're watching this, that bug is no longer in there, but that's just something you have to keep in mind. Also, might you say right now, it's like, okay, hit optimize, wait, oh, I actually don't have any artifacts. So sometimes you do have to check with like the things that you locked in, like, can you actually use those and blah, 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 that kind of stuff. So in this case, Luna doesn't have any artifacts, therefore doesn't yield any bolts. In this case, we have to go for the 163 over here. We still need 100 crit rate. Damage is definitely going to be different. If I hit search right now, it's going to be finding a lot of bolts, plus the damage is not set right yet. So I want to go for this. I don't know exactly how much the boss has, but I'm mostly point like 400k. I think that's kind of valid. We do have the death break. We have all of that. That's normal. We could set it to elemental damage if we also want to check it for like the artifacts. Most of the time, I only check the artifacts for the additional damage artifact lines on these units, and the other artifacts I kind of just check by myself and do kind of a min-maxing of just trial and error, saying like, okay, left side artifact is very simple, damage on fire, highest one with some other extra lines is good. Right side artifacts is more of a combination line kind of stuff, so that one you kind of have to figure out, because Luna has a combination of crit damage skill 3, crit damage max, crit damage own, crit damage first skill, so it's harder for this optimizer to actually get the right artifact in there. So for that reason, most of the time, I don't really optimize with an artifact. I just optimize without the artifact for those units. You could still do it to optimize with an artifact as well. So the option is definitely there. So as you can see, I let it optimize for just a bit. But if I let this run the whole thing, well, it's actually not that many results. But I most of the time kind of want to cut them off early because it's going to be finding a lot of builds, like I mentioned. So it can calculate all of the builds easily. Like there's 2 steps. Calculating the builds takes some time, but then also showing the results of all of those builds in here is going to take a lot more time. So if we were to take this number, let's say that is a decent number, the 130k. We put that number in here. If we hit the apply right now, we can already see that we went from like 100 something k bolts to like just 400 bolts, because I don't care about those bolts doing less damage than this. If I optimize right now, I can probably even put it to 100. It's going to take quite some time for finding all of those, so it's actually not that bad as well. But as you can see over here, it's not finding that many bolts, so it's not going to be super overdoing the amount of just trying to get all of those bolts in. I could be looking at like, okay, she's a little bit too fast on those builds that you want to tune that down, but I think in this case, it's kind of fine. We're taking like a rune from a Camilla. That is a rune that I use in PvE, so let's say you want to not, or in PvE, in RTA, in Siege, and that kind of stuff. So let's say I want to remove that as well. So let me remove that notepad for you for just a second. Then what you do is you hit the exclude. Once you hit exclude, nothing exactly happens over here, but it comes in here. You could still also say include, and then you could force in a specific rune if you really want to have that rune on the unit. But I would say like, okay, I don't want to use that Camilla rune because it's a fire rune. I want to use that somewhere else. If you were to say like, oh, it keeps taking on fire runes, you could also say like, okay, exclude all fire runes and we're excluding all will runes, for example, because those I want to use somewhere else. Those are definitely the useful things that you could say like, okay, let's exclude those few stats to not get them in there. So we did already hit the search right now, and we have a build that's a little bit too fast, but we can also see the difference in here that crit damage is a lot higher value than attack, which does make sense because we're dealing damage by enemy max HP. So in this case, we could go for this build. All of these units are totally fine. I don't need to have my R5 still runed. Would you say like, oh, I still want to have my R5 runed? Then you would go to like this, exclude those two, you will have like 3 excluded in here right now. Let's just do that for the sake of it. And then we can see like, oh, that's where my rune depth starts lacking. And then would have to start lowering the damage to actually get the damage in. So for that reason, it's what I really recommend, to have 1 dungeon ruined at a time rather than multiple dungeons ruined at a time, because that's just the way that I think you get the best builds out there. And I will also show at the end of the video how I do that using the optimizer as well, to just have like saved states of easier getting back to your sets. So in this case, this would be my Luna set, because I'm not gonna keep those ruined, and this is all fine. So let's lock that in very simply. So once those are locked in, we can also say Luna is fixed. After this right now, we're gonna go into the Shina. Shina, we're also going to, let's say we make Shina on a Fatal set. I definitely do have decent Fatal sets. I can definitely get another fight set in here as well. I do think I can get away with that. Let's go for attack, crit damage, attack. I would say that I want to search for crit rate as well. The interesting thing about her is that we have to go for the speed of this. We have to go for a skill 2, and we want to go without Death Break, because the first hit of Death Break does do a lot more damage if it's landed on Death Break, but there's no guaranteed of Death Break. So for that reason, we are mainly hitting on that. And then we also want to see like, okay, we're already getting a lot of builds because the speeds and stuff are pretty low. This one you do want to optimize with artifacts as well. However, there's also accuracy for this unit. So the normal accuracy that you, or the resistance that the boss has is 80. So therefore we need a 65. However, we have the passive is 25, and therefore we only need 40. And then we could also put some artifacts. Oh, this is already getting out of the line. Passive, that's 40. But then we can also do an artifact that is, for example, like a 15, and then we only need 25. So that is also, I do know that, I'm not sure if she still has that artifact. Yeah, that artifact mostly doesn't leave her. These are also the best artifacts that I know that are on her. So we have a 15 over here, so I do know that they only have to be looking at a 25 for her, yeah, just for her stuff. And I can be, since I already do know that those are the right artifacts, I can lock it in by artifacts as well. So we can go for 25, and I do see some damages over here as well already. Let's just see how much damage we get with a 25. We can still do quite some damage, it seems, so let's lock in this one. Can't see it on the screen right now, too often having that to click on and click off that thing. Let's see, okay, that's the only bolt with a fight, and it's using some Prilia stuff. That's totally fine. Perna, Rune, totally fine. Let's lock that in, and then we also have the Shina done already. With PvE in general, it's pretty easy. You just want to go for the highest damage build out there. There's not too much to say to it, rather than just saying like, okay, highest damage build is better. The only thing that you sometimes have to do is saying like, okay, I don't want to use fire runes or will runes, or, oh, there's one rune that's already on another unit that I don't really want to put in there. Something like that, but in general, it's just very easy, very straightforward of saying like, okay, highest damage set, it's as simple as that, and just go for it. So in this case, the Kaio goes for an 85. And we just want to go as high damage as possible on a rage set. I do want to go for a rage plus a fight, because Kaio is not the most amount of damage out there. So we have the damage in here. Let's actually change to the skill of Kaio itself. You will be hitting on a death break. You will always be critting. Also keep in mind that if you have a unit that doesn't have like the highest crit rate, you do want to put it on crit rate if you think that that unit would be critting at that moment. Otherwise, you can also put it on average. That's also one of those ways to just check that out as well. So let's say we do want to make sure that we are slow enough that we can give Luna a double turn. So in these builds, like for some reason it's finding a lot of speed. We could, which we actually didn't do on the other one, double check that if we change those numbers. I think I did, yeah, that's something I did forget on those right now. So if I put a speed in here, it's going to find a lot more speedy builds, and it's not finding the highest damage, right? However, if I were to change the focus, it's going to be resulting higher in damage. So let's say if we remove the crit damage as well. No, if removing the crit rate actually gave it lower on that. So that's definitely something that you could check around with, like with the focus. Sure, I don't do the highest of numbers over here, but let's actually put it to like proper numbers. Let's say that we are hitting for this. And then, okay, so it's going to be a 5132. Oh, and it's also, this is where the bug I was talking about. It's not trying to find fight right now. Sometimes you have to just unclick it and click it again, and then it's fixed that way. So with fight, we're definitely doing a little bit less damage. Let's just lower that by a little bit. Okay, still too low. That's also what you can kind of check, like, is the fight set worth enough? Because apparently with the blade set, I'm doing that much more damage. It's kind of like, do you need it for the threshold for your Julie, for example? So let's say we do need it for the threshold for the Julie, so we're actually going to lower this by quite a bit until we have the point where we can get that. Okay, so 13 and then 380. Let's put in back the speed. Can we actually get higher than that? Yes, we can. Okay, let's go for that. Let's just chuck up this to 100. You could also say, for example, I didn't do it in this case, but for the Luna, you could say like, okay, crit damage is a lot more interesting than the other stats. Or in this case, I could say like, okay, speed is important, but speed is important to a very minimal factor. Whereas crit rate is also not that important because it already has like the crit from, or it just needs 85. And then we just crank those up to the max and we can see if we get any results with that. Okay, we crank those up by too much. And yeah, we're still going to get the same build. We can always check back to default. It's not even going to get that build. So playing around with these numbers definitely can help out a little bit, because what you see just now is that if we crank up the attack, okay, it's not going to help. Crank down the speed, nope, still not helping. Where is it at? Okay, cranking up the crit damage. So that's definitely something that you could look at, like, okay, what is actually needed? We do see, however, that we still have a very high crit rate set on this, so probably we don't... Wait, why is that so crazy high? Let's remove the crit rate. Can we still see the builds? Nope, we don't see the builds. I just have strange runes. That's probably the way to go for it. If I crank this up higher than 100, nope, doesn't have any more builds than that. So it was that one build. It is useful to click on that one build because now I still have to refine it first before I can actually go for it. So go for this, nope. Go for that, nope, still not. Crank this up, crank that down. And then crank this up. And there we have the build again. So, okay, this is going to be the build that I will be using as a fight build. So you sometimes have to play around with like the optimization a bit. It's not necessarily saying like, okay, the first number you kick in, that's going to be the right number. And I can see with the crit rates on these builds that all of the crit rates that you get in there are kind of like high. So yeah, for that reason, it just ends up at like a high crit rate. But is what it is. The only thing is the speed is correct. Yep. So with this one, it's actually exactly on tick of the speed, which also means that the Liam, which is going to be the next unit, also has to be exactly on tick of that speed. So it has to be a 153 as well. If I wanted to potentially move at the mid stage, if I care about not having a move at the mid stage, I could make it a little bit slower as well. That is an option. So if we go for Liam, let's just for the sake of it, unclick those just to make sure that it works. Click those in. We're going to go triple fight. We go attack, crit damage, attack. We just have to go 85. The max in this case has to be the 153. Let's say that we don't think about going a little bit lower than that. We go for the unlimited power. We lock that in. And we definitely have to change this one to a lot less damage. We could also check like, okay, it is an ignored defense hit and therefore it will start doing a lot more damage. So we have like 10Ks. Let's say if we do for this, it is going to hit more than 10K. Like the 10K one, I am surprised why it's trying to find that much crit rate on all of those builds. Is it actually... Oh, wait, I did put it on average. Okay, so the Kyle build is wrong as well because I actually clicked it on average to showcase the average thing. So yeah, that's just something like... A lot of people are like, I don't like this because it's not showing me the right builds. It's probably because you did something wrong. Like you tell it what to do. It's not the other way around. So for that reason, if you're not finding the right builds, it's probably because you... picked something wrong, and that's what I did with the thing on average over here rather than that. I was like, why is that getting so high crit rate? Yeah, that's because it's trying to average it out, because then it takes like the damage output, and then it takes like the multiplier of like how much crit rate as like a value towards that. Like 100% crit rate is 100% damage, 90 is 90% damage, that kind of stuff. So yep, in this we can see that this is the highest build. I would have to go back in a real world to redo the Kyle, but since it's just a video purpose, I'm just gonna look at this. Are these all runes that I want to use? Yes, sir. Okay, let's lock those in and let's lock those. Now you would have to go in game and actually apply all of those runes to all of those units, and then you're done. That's pretty much all there is to it. It did take me a little bit of time, mainly because I am explaining a lot of stuff. If I would do this by myself, this takes me about 10 minutes. 10 minutes, 15 minutes tops. It is because I have a decent amount of experience with the optimizer. If you do want to do it really good and a lot of like nitpicking, like, okay, I'm just on the edge of hitting enough or not enough, then you could like tune around a little bit more with it. However, I think it's pretty fast done in general. I also use this for pretty much everything, RTA related everything. Or RTA, Siege, pretty much everything in the game. But then the question is like, okay, you did take like a few runes from your R5 team. I took the rune from the Brandy, I took the rune from the Bale. How are you gonna figure that out? Like, are you gonna do this every time you switch dungeons? Well, actually, you don't really have to. If we go to this tab, which is the one on top over here, we can say export data. As you can see over here, I actually have all of my data saved for just those things that I can lock in. Like, okay, I can say like, okay, this is my new Dragons team. So, and then I could maybe put a date to it, but it has a date to it already. If we were to save that right now, it saves the optimized data. If I were to import old data right now, let's say I import just my clean JSON file, it will of course not have those units runed up in here. It does take a little bit of time. Yeah, it doesn't have those bolts up here, and it doesn't have those units runed, of course, anymore. However, if I go back to the Dragons team over here that I just saved, I opened this one. Besides just having all of those units ruined again, all of those builds will also pop up over here at the top again. So I can just go back to those builds, just see like, okay, for my dragons, I just have to switch like a few runes, get those built back in. So with that import, we also have all of those units back again and ruined that back at that state. So it's definitely a useful thing that if you're switching dungeon teams and you're actually switching the runes on those teams, you don't want to have everything ruined at the same time. Which personally, like I farm giants for like a month and then I switch at some point. So don't have to have everything ruined at that same time. And even if you would say like, okay, I don't want to do this because I don't have that many crystals, at least make this kind of stuff, because that way you're gonna have the safest of teams. So sure, you might not want to do this for having the fastest teams, but doing this for having the safest teams and therefore saving crystals is very recommended. And with that, I can just simply go through the units, back at the unit saying like, okay, these are the artifacts that I have to place in. And then you have that team up and running again. And the moment that you already made it once, you could also go for like, okay, let's see if I were to, let's say that you have this saved and you would have like a few new rune upgrades and you're not 100% sure if you want to get any of those upgrades in. What you could do is you could go to keep bolts, and then you would import your normal JSON. So from that, you would actually have included your new runes, because it might be that you didn't go to dragons for like a month, 2 or 3. You still want to be basing the team of kind of the same style, but you don't really want to re-rune the whole thing from a start. So you could actually keep the builds based off your imported file from before, then import your newest JSON file into it. And then you could say like, okay, I want to check just the jewelry if my jewelry has maybe a rune upgrade or 2. And then you can also simply compare it by your jewelry, what you had last time, if you actually improve the damage compared to your jewelry right now. So that is definitely a way that something that you made in the past, and you can check the builds and then like revamp that later on, even if that unit wasn't ruined at the moment that you currently want to check that out. So a whole bunch of things that you can do for dungeon teams. You can also use this, of course, for R5 and all of that kind of good stuff. If you would want me to make more videos on these guides with the Summoners War Rune Optimizer, maybe on different fields like RTA, Siege, Arena, I don't know, something else, let me know in the comments. The comment with the highest vote for whatever content I should do it on next will probably be the next video. So guys, thanks a lot for watching. I hope you appreciate this video. And as always, see you in the next one. Also, the links to how to get your JSON will be in the video down below. How to get the optimizer will be in the video down below. And that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching, guys. See you later. Thanks for watching. If you would like to see more guides, join the Discord and check out the content tab, which has the dungeon guide archive and the video guide archive, which contains all of the guides that you need. Hope to see you there.